My name is Andreas. I'm leading the mobile engineering team at GetYourGuide, and I will shortly explain for the very few who don't know us what GetYourGuide is. GetYourGuide offers the largest travel and activities inventory worldwide. So what does that mean? You visit a city, you want to do something. You now have the option of researching hundreds or thousands of small websites of people who offer a city guide, who sell some tickets to some attraction, or you go to GetYourGuide because we have all the inventory. We collect all these offerings, we put them on a concise, clear, homogeneous presentation on our website. We make it easy for you to research what about the availabilities. We make it easy for you to pay for it. We make it easy for you to print out the ticket and actually get the experience that you were looking for. In short, we make it easy for you to enjoy the fun part of the trip. So that's our motto. If you look at inventory, if you look at the inventory, of course we are very much focused on European travel, but we have offerings worldwide, and in some we have something like 25,000 tours in 2,500 cities all over the globe. And what we actually do is, as already a little bit mentioned, we take all the supply from tour operators, from city guides, from people who offer stuff like that. We optimize their content, we take great fancy pictures, we translate the content into 14 different languages. We put it on our website, and then we distribute and market that content. One is, for example, the TV ad, but the other one is also, other channels are also partner networks like online travel agencies, TUI, all these big travel agencies where we put our offering and make it available. We, of course, like many of e-commerce startups, we started up as a web-only channel, but now we are on the apps. We have web app. Optimized web content, so we are on all the channels. We also play a little with wearables, so we have a lot of fun in that area. And one particular topic that is interesting to bridge that gap between the web content and the app content is, of course, Google's new app indexing. And in the following couple of slides, I'm going to talk a little bit what is this app indexing actually? How does it work? How do the different components work together? The web stuff, and the app stuff, and the web console stuff, and then the nasty stuff about tracking and things like that, experience that we made. So in short, this is how app indexing looks like. You open your phone, you search, for example, for a very popular tour, the Sistine Chapel tickets in Rome. You get a web results, and somewhere, hopefully on the very top, but not always, you will see our ticket actually, GetYourGuide, skip the line, Vatican Museum, Sistine Chapel. You click on that link, and our app will actually open with that very content and present to you nicely the Book Now button, and then from there everything is smooth. So that's the optimal experience, of course. You need to have the app installed, of course, otherwise you just see the regular web app content. And this allows us to actually connect our SEO, our SEM to our app, because there's something missing in the app market, in the how you discover content in apps, or how you actually discover apps themselves. And for us as an e-commerce company, this is a very important gap to bridge. And that's something that helps us actually convert search results to app opens or app installs, and also to boost the app engagement once a person has our app installed. Now, in short, all you need to have is deep linking support in your app. And that basically concludes the talk, and we're done. No. So there are many more things you have to do. So like defining a URL scheme that allows you to actually deep link to the very same content in the app that corresponds to the web content. There are many things to it. So what we actually did is we implemented some deep linking scheme that you could actually describe as a RESTful API on application level, kind of, right? So you can just deep link to the app and have all the parameters and resource access URL scheme as we actually trigger our own API that the app is using then at some point down the stack, right? And this allows us to really make this process of mapping content on the web and content in the app automatic, because we need that. We have thousands of web pages with content, and that needs to be an automated process. You don't want to write that for every single tour manually, right? And Google is actually very strict about it. So they complain if that content is not matching, and non-matching content will not show up in the results. So actually you would do a lot of work for nothing. So deep linking, a URL scheme that allows you to do content matching, and then of course the easiest part, the configuration, right? Connect your web page or web pages, if you have different languages and whatever, to your actual app, such that Google knows that it should do that. There are more requirements to that, a couple of requirements. Your app has to be minimum SDK of 17, otherwise linking into it won't work. That's called the first click free experience. So suppose you just installed the app, you never opened it, you didn't look at it. Now you search for something on your mobile web browser. You actually find a result with an app index, and you click on it. And now the app should open and go to that very page. And you should not show any introduction banner. You should not show any login wall. You should not show anything that is distracting from the actual content that you were linking into. The point is not to show you fancy intro onboarding screens. The point is to show this very content that you actually clicked onto. That's also something that would actually result otherwise in a content mismatch error, and Google will report this to you, and then this stuff will not show up in search results. Then of course in your app itself, in the manifest, you have to enable all the deep linking for the intent that you're using. You have to enable the action view, you have to enable default as a category, and also browsable if you want other links to be usable for your app. So, and then you have to connect this. So that's the Google Web Console. If you published an app already, you know this console very well. You just add all the websites that you actually want to be used as a source of indexes to trigger your app. And as you can see, we have a couple of languages here. Actually, all GetYourGuide dot whatever country domain. And then the deep linking, as mentioned already, what we actually do, as opposed to, I would say, the default Android style, how you would do deep linking, is we don't deep link to the intent that might be actually the one that you want to open for a specific content. That would create way too many entry points for us, and we would have to manage the specific deep link in this specific activity, and it would be very distributed all over the place on how these things, how we should process these things. So we decided we have this one home intent that we actually use, and that one is listening to all the deep links, and inside there we actually catch that, and we process this query on our own to decide what do we want to show, which activity is actually responsible for showing that, what parameters do we have to pass to that activity, and what language, all these things, right? So this allows us to have the whole deep linking URL scheme decoding in a single place. It's easier to maintain stuff. We can then trigger the corresponding activity. This activity then knows what to do, get data from the API, whatever, and show a list or whatever kind of view. But the key point is really have this all in one place, because later on you will see which kind of URL schemes we have, and it would get a little bit messy if you would do really the straightforward, okay, like you want to see a tour, open the tour detail intent. You want to do a search, open the search intent. You want to see a ticket, open the ticket intent. And now this is, you're going to have 30 places then in the end that you have to manage. Now let's look at a concrete example, right? That's our web page for Amsterdam. That's a so-called location landing page. You're looking for something very specific for Amsterdam, and if you look at the headers, so that's here, and the red arrow actually indicates the important part for the deep linking. That's actually all you have to do in your web page. Just define that header, and then Google knows what to do. So Google is actually crawling your website, as it always did. It's catching that and puts it in another index, and then it will crawl that index later. I will come to that. But that's basic, and if in the other index this link is deemed okay, then you will actually, for that page, you will get an app index result. And you can click it, and it actually triggers that actual link here, and that opens the app. And here in this URL scheme, you see that, I think it's off now? No, it's back here. That's our app identifier actually. That's our scheme, GYG, GetYourGuide. And now that's the RESTful style URLs pattern. And you will see many different approaches here. And of course, there are many different deep linking schemes right now competing with each other that you have to support. This is the second thing why it's very important to have the thing centralized, because different schemes want to do different things, so you have to manage all of them. So what you have is this Android app link, package ID, scheme, and host path. And this host path is the one thing that we actually then decode in the intent and route through the app. And then you're gonna have content mismatches. It's, I suppose, it's unavoidable, and that's a message that you will get from Google. It looks like that. It say, please open that link here. That's your web page, and open that link in your app. That's your app, because we think that doesn't match. The web has been crawled on the 18th of November. The app has been crawled on the 14th of November. So please look at it. And yeah, let's do that together, right? So this is our app result on the left. App for Hurghada. On the other side, that's the right thing. That's the mobile web result, also for Hurghada. And the actual results, if you look at content, tour content-wise, is the very same. So from our point of view, that's the very same content. But for Google, it's not the same content. There are many reasons for that, right? So first reason is the app is very much date triggered. So if you open our app and you search for something, you get this nice calendar scroll bar on top of it, and it will choose your current date. And if it's after 6 o'clock in the evening, it will choose tomorrow. Because that's the most likely date that you're interested in if you open the app. That's kind of what we figured out, how our customers behave, right? If people look on the web, search on the web, they're kind of, yeah, the time frame is not so important. You might be planning ahead a week or two. If you open the app, you're usually somehow in location or just at home getting in the plane or something. You know, you're very close to the actual date that you're interested in doing this activity. So it's a very useful shortcuts for people actually to just see the results for today, tomorrow, or for a particular date. That's completely missing in the mobile web, right? So, and that's not just a visual thing here, that would actually also influence content. Because that dolphin tour, okay, it's available now on both, right? But that could not be available on Fridays, which is chosen here as the date, right? So what if this is a tour that's only done on Monday, Tuesday, and Saturday? Then we wouldn't actually show it here. So that would be a content mismatch. But yeah, one could argue, right? That's actually something we want to mismatch, because the app has a different target group, a different focus, a different use case than the web. And yeah, so that's a difficult part, and we don't have a solution for that actually.
Yeah, but why are you doing this? So maybe, I don't know, I don't have the thing. I think, okay, that's a problem. So why,
what do you mean?
What's your advantage for this web or this app to the normal responsive version of the website? Do you have any?
No, the app completely encapsulates the whole booking and ticketing flow. So you have tickets, everything offline than in the app. And we also see a much higher conversion rate on the ads actually.
Okay. So, but
that's why we do it.
But you can, maybe the same theme of your normal app could be the responsive version of the website. Or, you know what I mean? It could be the same. So
it could be, yeah, but it's not.
Yeah.
Yeah. What's the consequence? What does Google do if you mark this as fixed and you don't fix anything?
Actually, that we didn't try. If we just claim it's fixed, that's maybe a good point. So right now, this result, the consequence of that mismatch is just the following. When people find Hurghada in their web search, right, they will just go to the mobile website and not the app. So that's not a huge issue, right? It's not like we are not discoverable anymore in Google. We just miss out on the opportunity to have people actually brought into the app. And that's something actually desirable, because we know once people are in the app, it's more likely that they book, right?
Do you know how Google crawls your app?
Yes, I will come to that later. Yeah, the second more visual thing is that the actual tour description, it looks different, right? So we have bigger pictures in the web, the small kind of itemized thing in the app. And we actually have on the mobile website a more sophisticated location landing page, as opposed to the app, which has the location landing page basically triggered through GPS. Right? So you would get this Hurghada landing page actually only when you're in Hurghada. Okay. Then there's other content, like if you. So the problem here is just to summarize that stuff. We just have a slightly different way how we discover things in the app, as opposed to the web, and that's something that has grown. That is something that is, I would say, it was evolutionary process that led to that situation. Because you test stuff, right? You do A/B testing, you try out things, what works better, what doesn't, and that's kind of the current state, right? That's also evolving. It's continuous evolving, right? We might end up in a very different place in 6 months. So, on the other side, when we have a very clear resource So let's go back to the RESTful approach, right? We have a very clear resource that we're accessing. Now, this is a tour and it has an ID, right? And it's very clear what it is. And now I have the Sistine Chapel again, the one that we actually saw that you can find in the app indexing. Here the content matches very closely, and that's actually recognized by Google as well. And yeah, you can perfectly find that. And if you look at the actual app link in the website, so that's the header of this website, it's actually this tour and you're accessing it by a concrete ID. So it's going to be always the same. It doesn't change whether it's in the night or in the evening or it's available or not. So this is just a very clear resource that you can access. And therefore it's also much easier to do the matching. So there are other additional possibilities to do app indexing. So there are also situations where you don't have a website actually, you're app only business, or your app the content doesn't make sense on the web or whatever, for whatever reason. You can actually also use the app indexing API in your app. That's something when you actually create a view, or you would actually push that content to Google. That's a big advantage if you don't have a website. But also if you do, that might make sense, because with that, if you use that, your content actually shows up in Google's autocomplete. So while you search, it already starts to show up. And that's not the case with the regular, just the header in the web page. So some tips and tricks and stuff that we figured out. So first of all, the content matching. So this is it's a really important part. And depending on how important that is for you, you might even, maybe as you mentioned, right, you might even go that far and say, hey, let's change layouts and make things more uniform in order to actually don't have that matching problems.
Or change the other content.
Or change the other content, yeah. So that's a decision that you have to make, and that basically depends on how much priority you give that, right? Monitor the webmaster console for all those mismatches. You have mismatches, but you can also have server errors. So a common thing is what we had is actually if you have location searches and you had cities like New York and you had the space in it, and that wasn't encoded correctly, that gave you then a server error, right? Because the URL is bad request, something like that, right? So look out for all those things and resolve issues, be active. So Google is not the bad guy here, but they really, of course, want to have their content clean, right? And there are two more things that are important that we actually learned, I would say, the hard way. It's how the Google crawler works for that stuff, and especially if you do e-commerce app like ourselves, what that means for your in-app tracking. So our app, of course, has lots of tracking. We want to know where people go, where people drop off the funnel and stuff like that, right? And that looks a little bit crazy after you enable that. So that's the Google crawler, big black box, right? And the Google crawler actually collects all those app index links in your header, puts it in this app index database, and now, at some point in time, they take all those app links, fire up an emulator with your app, and start firing towards your app. Right? Now your app starts up in some emulator, asks for that content like the rest of the app does, and sees if it matches. So first of all, of course, you have to enable the Google bot on your API. If you don't, the content is, of course, a mismatch, right?
Do you recognize if it's a fire up from the emulator?
On the API, we do that. On the API, you get a user agent Google bot. That's no problem. The problem appears in the app, right? Because in the app, you don't really know that. It's just an actual. It could be a legit app that asks for the content, right? And that's what we have, right? We were not able to distinguish that traffic. And we were really happy when we saw how popular we were in Mountain View, right? So these are the first 3 days of app indexing or something, so we had kind of 85% of our traffic coming from Mountain View, and wanted to shift all the marketing budget there already, but turned out they're not humans, right? So, yeah, bad luck. So, there are some strategies. If you look back there, it's an emulator, and it sits in Mountain View. So, do you want to just ignore every traffic from Mountain View? Maybe for us, it's a mostly European business, it could be okay, right? But it's somehow, yeah. So, solution one is, and that's also actually that we discussed with Google is just add another parameter to your deep link. But actually, and then just when this parameter is not here, just don't do the tracking, right? But that's not a solution, because also the actual traffic that comes from app indexing is ignored, because the link, that's what you actually click when you click your Google result, right, in search result. And we would not have any idea on how good the app indexing is performing, because we just ignore all this traffic. So that's a bad solution, right? The other solution is you know where this traffic is coming from, and it has some empirical results. Let's say we know it is going to be the fingerprint of that device will have some generic or generic x86 stuff in that, and then you can ignore that traffic. Of course, there's also some false detection in there. Actual emulators that try to use your app will not be tracked. Rooted devices, different bootloaders might also have this generic in there. Yeah, that's a trade-off. That's first of all, you do the tracking decision in the app. It's not so nice, right? Because if something changes, the app is out there, yeah, you might not be able to change that, or fast at least. And if this fingerprint changes, if Google decides to do a different setup, yeah, it's all for nothing, right? It doesn't help anymore. But in the end, we didn't have a better idea, so that's what we did. So, but work in progress, right?
Yeah, I think at that point you see the difference between Google Search and Google Analytics, because Analytics had this problem and Search is inventing this. So yeah, maybe we talk to each other and then we figure out something.
Yeah, actually we were discussing that topic with Google, and I think they were not really aware of that. Yeah. So yeah, so I'm still waiting for an answer. So, and that also kind of concludes my talk. Ready? I have a device here where we can look at it then online and or offline actually, and try that out just for you to see. But as a conclusion, I think it's a very interesting thing to bridge this gap between web and app. So I think these two kind of domains are going to be closer and closer and closer with among many this app indexing. But there are pitfalls, of course, the content matching, and that's something that was not relevant before. Now it is relevant, and that might lead to yeah, apps that look differently, or mobile websites that look differently, just in order to make that happen. The tracking setup, extremely important for us as an e-commerce page, and that's something that really makes a lot of a difference for us, because basically all our decisions based on which kind of projects we do, which business we decide to do, which marketing campaign we want to do, depends on that data. And if you mess that data up, you have a serious problem, right? And then expand a little to app-only use cases with the API. I think that's also a very cool thing to just having your back. Okay, that concludes my talk, and thank you to take any questions and to try out things maybe.
Yeah, maybe this detecting if you're in an emulator, you could maybe also do by checking if there are hardware features available or not. Like
yes.
having an NFC, for example, okay, that's very uncommon as well, but maybe a Bluetooth or something that's very common on devices, or maybe measure how fast the device is, or how fast the processor is. Do a loop, I don't know, something like that.
Okay, with the loop, I don't know. Maybe if you really want to have that done on every device, right? So is you waiting for a while and see.
Or combine several factors, maybe.
No, but that's actually the first step here. That kind of was the first thing to get the data back to, well, reasonable. Let's say. Because you saw the Mountain View thing, that's unreasonable data. You can just not use that, right?
And then if you know that it's Mountain View data, then you can not only ignore the data, you can also adapt to your web presentation, so you can solve the other problem as well. So you can change the strategy for how to display content.
You mean only for these?
Only for the emulator.
Like but this is something that's very discouraged, right? And I don't know how they would react if they would figure that out. That you actually you show different content to the crawler than you actually show to people, right? I mean, that would be the same thing. You show different content to the Google web crawler when you actually show.
That's what people do.
Yeah.
Don't do black hat. Don't do black hat. Don't do black hat in the long term.
Exactly. So that's it feels a little bit like cheating. So. So that's not So we want to stick to the rules here. But of course, there are many more things that you can include in than just this generic, right? To actually make it good, but it's always going to be a heuristic, something with some probability of error until Google actually makes it available through some API or some other parameter.
Probably they won't, because of this problem that people would display different content.
Yeah, probably. Yeah, could be.
Do you run into any problem with timing? And I don't know, I guess your content is pretty similar, but you know, if you're dealing with something where your content updates on the same page, because it showed that there was a mismatch between the 14th and the 18th or something like that.
Yeah.
And if your content changes every
that's actually very much related to this date problem. So it's not a timing problem in the sense that the page somehow updates a lot. But especially if you look at search, you can have very different results on the 14th than on the 18th. Right? Availabilities could change, completely. Right? It could be a completely different set of tours that are available for Hogara. So that's not a very common case, right? So many tours have a very regular schedule, but it's perfectly possible. And it's also possible on the actual content of the tour that you can access with the tour ID. Because we optimize content all the time and make translations available and stuff. And actually also the supplier can ask to update the picture or to change the text, or actually also to remove the tour, right? So on the 14th the tour is available, on the 18th the guy actually asked for the tour to be deleted, so it's not available, right? These things,
But I guess if you just clicked mark fixed and assume that all the time the website would show the same thing that the app shows, would that be? Would probably be fine with them if you say it's fixed and they check it now and it does match and it's fine.
Yeah, but that would go somehow in the same direction, right? So you just make it work for the crawler.
No, not making it work for the crawler. I mean, if the tour updates on your website. And so they're like, hey, this doesn't match anymore, but it should match.
Of course. If that's really just like, I don't know, some text changed, and you know the text is changed, and if you would click it now, it's the same on both, you can just, of course, just mark it as fixed,
Okay, all right, that much. All right. So, slow-mo. Thank you.